Howdy, howdy, welcome back, and thank you for welcoming me back on this fine evening. Today we will be talking about emotional mastery and state control on the path of going from welfare to well-off, whether in our social or romantic relationships, whether with our body, with our mind, and our mental, spiritual, emotional well-being, or in business in general. State control, mastering our emotions rather than having our emotions master us, is one of the most, I don't want to say, but maybe I will say, if not, maybe the most important fundamental you can pick up. All the greats, from Tony Robbins to various dating coaches who teach you how to be successful with the opposite gender, to psychologists, to Les Brown teaching you about chasing your dreams, to this great Zig Ziglar and, just how to greet each day with joy and productivity. State control is massive. It's absolutely massive. In the Arabic language, rather than saying, "How are you?" which kind of sets it up in a default state, or as if that's, where you just are. How are you is kind of stagnant. However, in Arabic, it's kaifa halik. What is your state? State meaning temporarily. How are you feeling in this moment? And that's all a state is. It's a moment. So knowing our emotional makeup is very, very, very powerful. And it's so powerful because it helps us control our reactions to our environment and our reactions even to ourselves, and how we are dealing with said environment. When we work on and are cognizant of what makes us feel mad, sad, happy, angry, remorseful, guilty, all these states, anxious, apprehensive, we can better avoid these states when they're unnecessary. And quite often they are necessary. When you're feeling one of these states, it's obviously there for a reason. It might be saying this external factor needs to go. It might be saying this habit you're exhibiting is very toxic, so it needs to go. But it's a signal more than anything, and rather than letting it dominate you, you need to dominate it. And recognizing them when they're valid is very, very, very important, and quite often they are valid. However, rather than live in them, we need to learn to work through them. We need to learn to work on what they mean. Probably the first time I really realized this, but I never took it to heart, I was in my, I want to say I was in my late teens. I was about 19 years old, and I had first gotten the books Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert T. Kiyosaki. And in those books, he has recommendations of other books, and one of them was this small but beautiful little gem right here, The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. And, I mean, look up this man's story. He has some speeches from when he was active and with us, and his story of where he was, essentially damn near a homeless drunk, feeling like blowing his own brains out, to going into a library and starting to read because he was cold, to one of the world's greatest salesmen himself. He has several scrolls in the book, and one of them is the scroll marked 6, which I'm going to read a little excerpt from. Just a small point, but it says this: "And how will I master my emotions so that every day is a happy day and a productive one? I will learn the secret of the ages." Here we go. "Weak is he who permits his thoughts to control his actions. Strong is he who forces his actions to control his thoughts." So what I was just getting at, where I kind of went into this moment, is recognizing when they're valid, but rather than living in them, working through them. Action, we can work through them. Once we have this negative emotion, this negative state, it's often a signal that something is wrong. And that's for us to recognize and appreciate the good in the fact that we're able to recognize it. And that the pain or the joy or the anxiety, it's a signal of something. And once we are able to recognize and be cognizant of it, we can stop reacting negatively and start being proactive. Rather than letting it dominate us and how we act, we can recognize it and act upon it to change it. So, for instance, I struggled with what I thought was depression for a long period of time. However, I realized it was myself a lack of purpose or a feeling of boredom and a lack of productivity. And I've noticed when I get into depressed mode, more often than not, if I do something productive, I'm much more apt to get out of that mode, because a lot of depression is thinking of the past, and myself with my drug addiction and the mistakes that I made. I realized that I wasted a lot of time from the ages of, really, 13 to 21. I blew those years. And then, I was picking up the pieces and playing catch up for another 5-6 years after that. So, and still playing catch up to this day. I mean, breaking negative habits is very, very difficult. So that being said, once we can recognize these states, once we can, be more in tune with ourselves and accept that we're in these states and accept that we have control over them, we can find certain ways to get over anxiety through physical action, like doing something productive, or through a mental action and taking an inventory of why we're feeling that way. I'm going to go over several of the states in this little series right here, and we're going to use some book knowledge and then some of my own personal experience and strength to hopefully give you hope. So once again, it's one of the most important things we can do is to, number one, be cognizant of our emotional states, and number two, realize that they're just that, a state. And once we realize that they're a state, we realize that they don't control us. More often than not, we can find a way to control them and harness the seemingly negative states and emotions and turn them into very, very positive things and major catalysts for positive, powerful change in our life. I hope everybody has enjoyed this and that it gives a little bit of hope and it piques your interest a little, and I can't wait to get into more of this with you guys. I hope everybody's having a wonderful, blessed, beautiful, productive, and successful day, morning, or evening, whatever it may be, wherever you may be, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.